The massive ships dropped out of hyperspace like dark clouds covering the sun. Admiral Vexithara stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small blue world spin slowly in the void. Earth looked so peaceful from this distance, so helpless. "Scan results, Commander," Vexithara ordered. His voice carried the authority of someone who had conquered 12 worlds. "Sir, the planet shows primitive technology, basic fusion power, simple space stations. Their largest ships are barely the size of our shuttles." Commander Zektar's 4 eyes gleamed with amusement. "This will be over quickly," Vexithara nodded. The humans were soft creatures with no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. They had stumbled into space travel somehow, but they were still prey animals. The Kitharan Empire had faced thousands of species across the galaxy. None had lasted more than a few solar cycles against their fleets. "How many ships do they have?" Vexithara asked. 43 vessels in total, sir. Most are cargo ships. Only 12 appear to be military craft." Zektar paused his report. "Sir, they're trying to contact us. Put them through." The screen flickered to life. A human male appeared wearing a simple blue uniform. His face showed no fear, which surprised Vexithara. Most species begged for mercy when they saw the Imperial fleet. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Space Command. You are in human space without permission. State your business," Vexithara laughed. The sound was like grinding metal. "I am Admiral Vexithara of the 3rd Imperial Fleet. Your world belongs to the Kitharan Empire now. Surrender your ships and prepare for occupation. You have 12 hours to comply." Jake Morrison stared back without blinking. "I've got a better idea. Turn your ships around and leave. This is your only warning." The bridge fell silent. No prey species had ever spoken to the Empire like this. Vexithara's claws extended slightly from their sheaths. "Human, you do not understand. We have 37 dreadnoughts. Each one can destroy your entire fleet. You have 12 small ships. This is not a battle. This is pest control." Jake Morrison smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Admiral, you're counting wrong. You're counting ships and guns and armor. But you're not counting the one thing that matters. And what is that, little human? How far we're willing to go to protect our home." The transmission ended. Vexithara stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned to his officers. "Prepare for battle. Show these creatures what happens when prey tries to bite back." Across the solar system, Jake Morrison stood in the command center of Luna Base. Around him, dozens of officers worked at their stations. The room buzzed with quiet efficiency. "Status report," Jake said. "All ships are in position, sir," reported Commander Lisa Brooks. "The orbital platforms are ready. Mars defense grid is online," Jake nodded. He had served in the Earth Space Navy for 20 years. He had fought pirates and dealt with alien first contacts. But this was different. This was survival of the species. "Sir," called Lieutenant Alex Chen from the communication station, "we're getting reports from across the system. Ceres Station is evacuating their civilians to the inner bunkers. The Jupiter mining colonies are moving their families to the deep shelters." "Good. What about the fleet?" "All captains report ready for combat, sir. Though," Lisa paused. "Sir, they're right about the numbers. We're badly outgunned." Jake walked to the main display screen. It showed the positions of both fleets. The Kitharan ships were massive, each one bristling with weapons. The human ships looked like toys in comparison. "Lisa, do you know what my grandfather told me about fighting?" "No, sir. He said that size doesn't matter if you're too dumb to use it right. These aliens have been conquering primitive worlds for so long, they've forgotten how to fight smart opponents." "You think we can beat them?" Jake studied the tactical display. The enemy ships were moving in a standard attack formation. No creativity. No adaptation. They expected the humans to line up and die quietly. "I think we can make them regret coming here." The first shots came 6 hours later. The Kitharan fleet opened fire on the outer defense platforms with their main guns. The platforms exploded in brilliant flashes of light. "Return fire," Jake ordered. The human ships launched their missiles in coordinated waves. Most were shot down by the enemy point defense systems, but a few got through. They struck the Kitharan shields like raindrops on a window. "Minimal damage to enemy vessels," reported the weapons officer. Jake wasn't surprised. The human weapons were too weak to seriously hurt the alien ships. But that wasn't the point of this first exchange. "Did our sensors get good readings on their shield frequencies?" "Yes, sir. We're analyzing the data now." "Good. Signal all ships. Execute Plan Delta." The human fleet scattered in 12 different directions. The Kitharan ships tried to follow, but they were too big and slow to keep up. They had been built to fight enemies who stood still and traded shots. Admiral Vexithera watched with growing irritation as the human ships darted around his fleet like insects. Why don't they stand and fight? Sir, they're using hit-and-run tactics. Small groups attacking our rear ships, then running before we can respond. Cowards, Vexithera snarled. All ships maintain formation. They cannot hurt us with these pinpricks, but the pinpricks were adding up. The human ships were learning with each attack. They found weak spots in the Kitharan shields. They targeted sensor arrays and weapon systems. They were like a pack of wolves attacking a bear, working together to bring down something much larger. Captain Danny Rivers led his destroyer squadron in a daring attack on the enemy flagship. His 3 ships dove straight at the massive vessel, firing everything they had. The Kitharan return fire destroyed 2 of his ships instantly, but Danny's vessel got close enough to launch a full spread of torpedoes at point-blank range. The torpedoes exploded against the flagship's hull. For the first time in the battle, a Kitharan ship took real damage. Sir, reported Commander Zektar, his voice tight with surprise. Hull breach on deck 7. We have casualties. Vexthara stared at the damage reports. How had these primitive creatures hurt his ship? They were supposed to be prey animals. Prey didn't fight back like this. The battle continued for 18 hours. When it ended, the human fleet was scattered and half destroyed. But the Kitharan fleet had lost 3 ships and suffered damage to a dozen others. This should have been over in minutes. As the alien fleet moved toward Earth for the final assault, Vexthara found himself thinking about the human captain's words. The humans had counted something the Empire had missed. They had counted their willingness to die for their world. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Vexithara felt something he had never experienced before. He felt doubt. The warning came at 0400 hours. Commander Lisa Brooks was drinking coffee in the Europa Station Command Center when the sensors picked up the incoming fleet. 30 Kitharan warships were heading straight for Jupiter's moon. How long until they arrive? Lisa asked the sensor operator. 6 hours, ma'am. Lisa set down her coffee cup. Her hands were steady, but inside she felt the familiar cold fear of battle approaching. Europa Station was home to 50,000 people. It was also humanity's most important research facility and the gateway to the outer system. Send the evacuation order. All civilians to the deep shelters. All non-essential personnel to the transport ships. Ma'am, the transports can only carry 10,000 people. I know. Lisa's voice was quiet. Get the children and elderly on first. Then the scientists. Everyone else goes to the shelters and hopes the armor holds. The next 6 hours passed like minutes. Lisa watched her people prepare for battle with the same calm efficiency they used for everything else. Humans were good at this, she thought. They were good at facing impossible odds and finding ways to survive. Commander, incoming transmission from the Kitharan fleet, called Lieutenant Pete Walsh. Put it through. The alien commander appeared on screen. His face was covered in scales and his eyes were cold yellow. Human station, you will surrender immediately. Lower your shields and prepare for boarding. I've got a better idea, Lisa replied. Come and take it. The alien's face twisted with anger. We have 30 ships. You have 1 station. This is not a battle. You're right, Lisa said. It's a lesson. The transmission ended. Lisa turned to her weapons officer. All platforms online? Yes, ma'am. Missile batteries at full load. Point defense systems ready. The new adaptive targeting system is operational. Lisa nodded. The adaptive targeting system was Dr. Amy Foster's latest invention. It learned from each shot fired, adjusting for enemy movement patterns and defensive measures. The Kitharan ships had never faced anything like it. Here they come, reported the sensor operator. The enemy fleet approached in perfect formation. Lisa watched them on the main screen and shook her head. They were so predictable. They had conquered so many worlds by simply overwhelming their enemies with superior firepower that they had forgotten how to be creative. Fire when ready, Lisa ordered. Europa Station's missile batteries opened up. But instead of firing at the approaching ships, they fired at empty space. The missiles deployed sensor drones and communication relays, creating an invisible network around the station. The Kitharan commander must have thought the humans had panicked and missed their targets. His ships continued their approach without changing formation. Phase 2, Lisa said quietly. Hidden weapon platforms that had been disguised as debris suddenly came online. They had been positioned weeks ago, waiting for this moment. The Kithaeron fleet found themselves surrounded by enemies they hadn't even known were there. The battle began in earnest. The alien ships had powerful shields and heavy armor, but they had expected to fight one target, not dozens. The hidden platforms hit them from every direction, while Europa Station's main guns hammered their formation from the center. Enemy ship taking heavy damage, reported the weapons officer. Their lead destroyer is breaking off. Lisa watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The adaptive targeting system was working perfectly. Every shot was more accurate than the last. The computer was learning the enemy ship's weaknesses in real time, but the Kithaeron fleet was learning too. After losing 2 ships to the hidden platforms, they adapted their tactics. They began hunting the platform systematically, using their superior numbers to overwhelm each one. Platform 7 is destroyed, called the sensor operator. Platform 12 is going offline. Lisa knew they couldn't win a straight fight. The aliens had too many ships and too much firepower. But that had never been the plan. The plan was to teach them that humans were not easy prey. Signal all remaining platforms. Execute Omega Protocol. The surviving weapon platforms suddenly changed their behavior. Instead of trying to destroy the enemy ships, they began ramming them. Each platform was armed with a nuclear warhead that detonated on impact. The Kithaeron commander watched in horror as his ships were attacked by weapons that didn't care about their own survival. This was not how space battles were supposed to work. Ships were valuable. Crews were valuable. No rational species threw away their assets like this. Sir, we've lost 8 ships, reported his weapons officer. The humans are using suicide tactics. Then we stay at long range and bombard the station, the commander ordered. But when his ships pulled back to bombard Europa Station, they found that the station wasn't there anymore. The massive structure had broken apart into dozens of smaller sections, each one moving independently. What had looked like one target was actually 50 separate units. Lisa watched from the command section as her station transformed around her. Europa had been designed with this capability from the beginning. Every section could operate alone if needed. All sections report ready for independent operations, called Lieutenant Walsh. Good, now, we show them what happens when you hunt humans in our own territory. The separated sections of Europa Station began their own guerrilla campaign. They hid behind asteroids and used Jupiter's magnetic field to mask their signatures. They popped up to take shots at the enemy fleet, then disappeared again before return fire could reach them. The Kithaeron ships found themselves fighting ghosts. Every time they targeted a section of the station, it vanished. Every time they thought they had the humans cornered, new enemies appeared from unexpected directions. Sir, we're taking continuous damage from multiple directions, reported the alien weapons officer. We can't pin them down. The Kithaeron commander stared at his tactical display. He had come here expecting an easy victory against a fixed target. Instead, he was fighting an enemy that refused to follow the normal rules of warfare. The battle continued for 12 more hours. Slowly, inevitably, the human defenders were being worn down. They had skill and creativity, but the aliens had numbers and firepower. Lisa knew the end was coming when her command section took a direct hit from enemy heavy guns. The explosion threw her across the bridge and filled the air with smoke and sparks. Hull breach on decks 4 through 6 reported damage control. We're losing atmosphere. Lisa pulled herself back to her feet. Through the smoke, she could see her remaining crew working frantically at their stations. They knew they were going to die, but they kept fighting anyway. How many sections do we have left? She asked. 8, ma'am, but most are heavily damaged. Lisa looked at the tactical display one last time. The Kithaeron fleet had lost 12 ships, but 18 were still operational. They would finish off the remaining station sections within the hour. Signal all sections. Prepare for final gambit. The last 8 sections of Europa Station came together one final time. They formed up in attack formation and charged straight at the enemy flagship. The alien ships concentrated their fire, destroying section after section, but one section got through. Lieutenant Alex Chen commanded the engineering section as it rammed the Kithaeron flagship at full speed. His last transmission was simple. Tell Earth we held the line. The engineering section's fusion reactor overloaded on impact. The explosion lit up Jupiter's sky like a second sun. The flagship and 3 nearby destroyers were destroyed instantly. When the light faded, Europa Station was gone. The Kithaeron fleet had won. but at a cost they had never expected. They had lost 15 ships to what should have been an easy target. The surviving alien commander sent his report back to Admiral Vexthara. The humans do not fight like other species. They treat their own lives as weapons. They learn from each engagement and adapt their tactics. This will not be the easy conquest we expected. Admiral Vexthara read the report with growing unease. Prey animals were not supposed to be this dangerous. They were not supposed to make predators pay such a high price for victory. The Empire was learning its first lesson about humanity. These strange creatures from the small blue world were not like other conquered species. They were something new, something dangerous, something that counted differently than the Empire had ever imagined. The news from Europa Station spread through human space like wildfire. Every colony, every mining station, every orbital habitat received the same message. The aliens were coming, and they were not interested in peaceful contact. Captain Danny Rivers read the report while his cargo freighter drifted near Ceres Station. He had been hauling ice to Mars when the emergency broadcast reached him. Now he stared at images of the destroyed Europa Station and felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Captain," called his engineer, Tony Martinez, "we're getting a general recall order. All ships are to report to Mars for fleet assembly." Danny looked around his small bridge. The steady hand was 30 years old and built for hauling cargo, not fighting wars. Her hull was thick enough to handle asteroid impacts, but her only weapons were a few mining lasers. "Tony, how long would it take to mount real weapons on this old girl?" "Sir, she wasn't built for combat." "The power systems couldn't handle military-grade equipment." "That's not what I asked." Tony thought for a moment. "Well, if we ripped out the cargo handling systems and rerouted all power to weapons, maybe we could mount a decent missile launcher, but the ship would be slow as a brick and one good hit would destroy us." Danny nodded. "Do it and send a message to the other freight captains. Ask them if they want to die in bed or die fighting." Across the system, the same conversation was happening on dozens of ships. Miners, traders, colonist transports, research vessels. Every human with a ship was making the same choice. They could run and hide or they could stand and fight. Most chose to fight. At Ceres Station, the asteroid miners were having their own meeting. Station Chief Linda Hayes gathered her people in the main assembly hall. The room was packed with miners, engineers, and their families. "You all know what happened at Europa," Linda said. "The aliens destroyed everything. 50,000 people dead, and they're coming this way." A miner named Bob Jackson stood up. "Chief, what are we supposed to do?" "This is a mining station. We don't have warships." Linda smiled grimly. "Bob, what do we use to crack asteroids?" "Shape charges and mass drivers." "And what happens when you point a mass driver at something smaller than an asteroid?" The room fell silent as everyone understood. The machines they used to move billion-ton rocks could be turned into the most powerful kinetic weapons in human space. "We can't run," Linda continued. "Our ships are too slow and the aliens are too fast. But we can make them pay for every meter of space." Similar scenes played out across human territory. On Mars, the agricultural domes began converting their farming equipment into weapons. On Titan, the research station started working around the clock to reverse engineer captured alien technology. Dr. Amy Foster hadn't slept in 3 days. She stood in her laboratory deep beneath Titan's surface, staring at pieces of a Catharan fighter that had been shot down during the Europa battle. "The power coupling here," she muttered to herself, pointing at a crystalline structure. "It's more efficient than anything we have. And this metal, it's some kind of smart alloy." Her assistant, Dr. Kevin Porter, looked up from his own workstation. "Amy, you need to get some rest." "You're talking to yourself again." "No time for rest. The fleet needs every advantage we can give them." Amy picked up a piece of alien armor plating. "Look at this. It's not just tough, it adapts. When you hit it with energy weapons, it becomes more resistant to energy. When you hit it with kinetic weapons, it gets harder." "So how do we beat it?" Amy smiled. It was not a nice smile. "We don't try to beat it. We make it beat itself." Meanwhile, Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of the newly assembled human fleet. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of over 200 ships. Most were converted civilian vessels, but they were all crewed by people who had decided that dying free was better than living as slaves. "Status report," Jake ordered. Commander Lisa Brooks, who had survived the destruction of Europa Station, looked tired but determined. "We have 47 actual warships, sir. The rest are converted freighters, mining ships, and passenger liners. Total crew complement is about 50,000. And the enemy? Intelligence estimates they have over 300 ships now, sir. They've been reinforced twice since Europa. Admiral Vexithara appears to be taking us seriously. Jake nodded. The aliens were learning too. They had expected an easy conquest, but humans kept surprising them. Now they were bringing enough force to crush any resistance. What about our special projects? Lisa consulted her tablet. Dr. Foster has made significant progress on the alien technology. We should have new weapons and armor within the week. The series mass drivers are operational and ready to deploy. The Mars orbital platforms are fully armed. Good. What's the status of Project Lazarus? The conversion is complete, sir. She won't look like much, but she'll pack a punch. Jake smiled. Project Lazarus was his own idea. Take the wreck of a destroyed Kithran cruiser and rebuild it with human technology. The result would be a ship that looked like an alien vessel but fought like a human one. The first major test came at the Battle of Mars. The Kithran fleet arrived expecting to find the same kind of fixed defenses they had encountered at Europa. Instead, they found something that defied all their tactical doctrines. The human fleet didn't try to hold position. Instead, they scattered throughout the inner solar system using the planets and asteroids as cover. When the aliens moved to attack one group, another group would appear behind them. Captain Danny Rivers led a squadron of converted freighters in the opening attack. The Steady Hand had been transformed into something that barely resembled a cargo ship. Her hull bristled with missile launchers and her cargo bay had been converted into a hangar for small fighters. All ships, this is Danny. Remember, we're not trying to win a stand-up fight. We're trying to make them bleed. His squadron emerged from behind Mars just as the Kithran advance guard passed by. 20 converted freighters against 8 alien destroyers. It should have been a massacre, it was. But not the massacre the aliens expected. The human ships had been redesigned for one purpose: to get close enough to the enemy to do maximum damage before being destroyed. They charged straight at the alien formation, absorbing tremendous punishment but never stopping. Danny's ship took a direct hit from an alien plasma cannon. The explosion tore away his port weapons array and killed half his crew. But the Steady Hand kept going and Danny kept firing. Tony, can you give me more power to the missiles? Sir, if I push the reactor any harder, she'll blow. Then push it harder. We only need to last another 30 seconds. The Steady Hand launched her final salvo at point-blank range, then rammed the nearest alien destroyer. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the Martian sky. When the battle ended 6 hours later, the human fleet had lost 80 ships. But the Kithran advance guard had been completely destroyed, and their main fleet had suffered significant damage. Admiral Vexithara received the battle reports with growing alarm. The humans had lost more ships, but they had achieved something no other species had managed. They had made the Empire pay a price in blood for every victory. More disturbing were the reports of human technological adaptation. They were learning to use captured Kithran weapons and armor. Some human ships now carried alien technology that had been modified in ways the Empire's engineers didn't understand. Sir, reported Commander Zektar, the humans appear to be evolving their tactics with each engagement. They're not fighting the same way they did at Europa. Vexithara studied the tactical analysis. The humans were becoming more dangerous with each battle. They were learning from their defeats and adapting their strategies. This was supposed to be impossible. Prey species didn't evolve this quickly. How long until our reinforcements arrive? He asked. 6 weeks, sir. Good. We'll need them. These humans are not what they appeared to be. In the aftermath of the Mars battle, something had changed in human space. The word was spreading to every colony, every ship, every person who called the solar system home. The aliens could be hurt. They could be beaten. The prey had learned to hunt, and they were getting better at it every day. 6 months into the war, the solar system had become a graveyard of ships from both sides. Colonel Ryan Stone floated in zero gravity inside the captured Kithran battleship, watching his Marines cut through an airlock with plasma torches. Breach in 30 seconds, reported Sergeant Amy Rodriguez over the comm. Ryan checked his weapon one more time. The captured Kithran plasma rifle felt strange in his hands, but it was more powerful than anything humans had built. That was the thing about this war. Both sides were learning from each other, whether they wanted to or not. Remember, we need prisoners this time, Ryan told his team. Intelligence wants to know about their command structure. The airlock exploded inward. Ryan led his Marines into the alien ship, moving through corridors designed for beings larger than humans. The artificial gravity was set too high, and the air was thick with the smell of ozone and metal. The first Kitharan warrior they met was over 7 feet tall, covered in natural armor and armed with claws that could tear through steel. 6 months ago, humans would have run from such a creature. Now they had learned better tactics. Ryan's Marines didn't try to fight the alien hand-to-hand. Instead, they used their smaller size to move around it, hitting it from multiple directions with stun weapons. The warrior fell within seconds, overwhelmed by coordinated attacks from enemies it couldn't see coming. "Target secured," Ryan reported. Moving to the bridge, the boarding action continued through the ship's corridors. The Kitharan crew fought hard, but they had been trained to fight enemies who met them head-on in honorable combat. They didn't know how to deal with humans who used the ship's own systems against them, who moved through ventilation ducts and maintenance passages like ghosts. By the time Ryan's team reached the bridge, they had captured 12 alien crew members and killed 30 more. The ship's captain, a massive Kitharan with scars covering his scaled face, stood waiting for them with his weapon drawn. "Human vermin," the captain snarled. "You fight without honor. You skulk in shadows like cowards." Ryan raised his plasma rifle. "We fight to win. Honor doesn't matter if you're dead," the captain charged, moving faster than something that large should have been able to move. But Ryan had been expecting this. He rolled to the side and let the alien crash into the bulkhead behind him. His Marines stunned the captain before he could recover. "Bridge secured," Ryan reported to the fleet. "Prize ship is ours." This had become the pattern of the war. Human forces would swarm enemy ships like antibodies attacking a virus, using their smaller size and greater flexibility to overcome the aliens' physical advantages. What had started as desperation had evolved into a new form of warfare. Captain Nicole Wade commanded the task force responsible for hit-and-run attacks in the outer system. Her flagship was the rebuilt wreck of a Kitharan cruiser, armed with a mixture of human and alien technology that shouldn't have worked together but somehow did. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported her sensor officer. "Kitharan patrol 3 ships. Nicole studied the tactical display. Her task force consisted of 8 ships, all of them hybrids built from salvaged alien hulls and human ingenuity. They looked like Kitharan vessels from a distance, which gave them a significant advantage in the opening moments of battle. "Signal the fleet. We'll use the Trojan Horse protocol." The human ships approached the Kitharan patrol using stolen identification codes. The aliens didn't realize they were under attack until the human vessels opened fire at point-blank range. The battle that followed was unlike anything seen in previous galactic conflicts. The human ships fought with a flexibility that confused the rigid Kitharan tactical doctrine. When the aliens tried to board what they thought was a damaged Kitharan vessel, they found themselves facing human Marines who had turned the ship into a trap. Lieutenant Commander Ben Taylor led the defense of the fake damaged ship. His team had rigged the corridors with improvised explosives and turned every compartment into a kill zone. The boarding Kitharan warriors found themselves fighting an enemy that had prepared the battlefield in advance. "They're trying to reach the bridge," Ben reported over the comm. "Let them," Nicole replied. "Spring the trap when they get there." The Kitharan boarding party fought their way through the ship, taking heavy casualties but pressing forward with their characteristic determination. When they finally reached the bridge, they found it empty except for a single human sitting at the captain's chair. "Welcome aboard," Ben said with a smile. Then he pressed a button. The bridge exploded, not enough to destroy the ship, but enough to kill or stun everyone inside. The boarding party was wiped out, and the Kitharan patrol found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't understand or predict. Dr. Amy Foster worked in her laboratory beneath Titan's surface, surrounded by hybrid technologies that combined human creativity with alien engineering. She had been awake for 48 hours straight, driven by the knowledge that every breakthrough could save human lives. "The adaptive armor is ready for field testing," she told her assistant, Dr. Kevin Porter. "It should be able to adjust to different types of damage in real time." Kevin looked at the prototype suit with admiration and fear. "Amy, this thing is more advanced than anything either species has built before." "Are you sure it's safe?" "Safe?" Amy laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Kevin, nothing about this war is safe. But this armor might keep our people alive long enough to win." The armor was just one of dozens of hybrid technologies Dr. Foster's team had developed. They had learned to combine human adaptability with Kitharan material science, creating weapons and defenses that neither species could have built alone. The war was changing both sides. The humans were becoming more aggressive, more willing to use any advantage they could find. The Kitharan Empire, meanwhile, was learning to respect an enemy they had initially dismissed. Admiral Vexthara stood in his command center, studying reports from across the war zone. The humans had gone from desperate defenders to effective predators in just 6 months. They were hunting his ships throughout the solar system, using tactics his military academies had never imagined. "Sir, we've lost contact with Patrol Group 7, reported Commander Zektar. "That's the 5th patrol this week."
"How are they doing this?"
"Intelligence believes the humans are using captured ships and identification codes to get close to our vessels before attacking." Vexithara's claws extended slightly. The humans were not just adapting, they were evolving. Each battle taught them new ways to hurt the Empire. They had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a prey species that had learned to hunt its predators. "What's the status of our reinforcements?" "The 5th Fleet will arrive in 2 weeks, sir, but—" Zektar hesitated. "But what?" "Sir, the humans are getting stronger too. They're not the same species we attacked 6 months ago. They've become something else." Vexithara knew what his subordinate meant. The humans had started the war as frightened prey animals defending their territory. Now they were aggressive hunters who struck at Kitharan forces throughout the system. They had learned not just to survive, but to thrive in conditions of warfare. The Battle of Proxima Centauri became the turning point. Captain Nicole Wade led her task force in a fighting withdrawal that lasted 3 weeks, drawing an entire Kitharan battle group into a system-wide game of cat and mouse. The aliens had superior numbers and firepower, but the humans had learned to use the environment itself as a weapon. They hid in asteroid fields, used stellar radiation to mask their signatures, and turned every planet and moon into a potential ambush site. "They're trying to corner us near the 4th planet," Nicole reported to her fleet. "Then we don't go near the 4th planet," replied Captain Paul Richards from his hybrid destroyer. "We make them come to us." The human ships led their pursuers through a maze of asteroids and debris, always staying just out of reach, but never letting the aliens give up the chase. When the Kitharan commander finally realized he was being led into a trap, it was too late. The asteroids weren't asteroids. They were camouflaged weapons platforms that had been placed there weeks earlier. The debris field wasn't natural. It was the remains of ships that had been deliberately positioned to create a kill zone. The Kitharan battle group found themselves surrounded by enemies they couldn't see, taking fire from directions they hadn't known existed. By the time the battle ended, they had lost twice as many ships as the human task force. Nicole Wade's final report to Earth Command was brief. "Mission accomplished. The students have become teachers. The Cubs are now counting stars." The Empire's High Command received Admiral Vexithara's reports with growing alarm. The humans were no longer prey. They had become apex predators in their own right, and they were teaching the galaxy a new kind of warfare. The war was far from over, but something fundamental had changed. The species that had once seemed like easy victims had evolved into something the Empire had never faced before. They had become hunters who counted not ships or weapons, but possibilities and opportunities. The children of Earth had learned to hunt among the stars. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the final Kitharan fleet approach Earth. 2 years of war had changed everything. The solar system was no longer the peaceful collection of colonies and trading posts it had once been. It had become a fortress, and every human in it had become a warrior. "Enemy fleet composition?" Jake asked. Commander Lisa Brooks consulted her displays. 240 ships, sir, including 12 super dreadnoughts. It's the largest fleet the Empire has ever assembled. Jake nodded. The aliens were finally taking humanity seriously. They had brought enough firepower to crack planets. But they still didn't understand what they were really fighting. "What's our status?" 180 ships ready for combat, sir. Plus the system defenses. Lisa paused. "Sir, they still outnumber us." "Lisa, you're counting wrong. You're counting ships. Count opportunities instead." The past 2 years had taught humanity many lessons, but the most important was this. The enemy always counted the obvious things. Ships, weapons, armor. They never counted creativity, adaptation, or the willingness to turn the entire solar system into a weapon. Captain Pete Walsh commanded the converted asteroid Hammer of God, a rock the size of Manhattan that had been hollowed out and filled with weapons. It drifted in the outer asteroid belt looking like just another piece of space debris. The Catharan fleet passed within 50,000 kilometers and never noticed it. All weapon systems online, Pete reported to the fleet, ready to begin Operation Apex Predator. Similar reports came in from across the system. The moons of Jupiter had been converted into fortress stations. The asteroid belt had become a minefield of hidden weapons. Even the space around Earth itself had been filled with defensive platforms that looked like commercial satellites. Dr. Amy Foster watched from her command post deep inside Ceres station as her masterpiece prepared to deploy. The Lazarus network was her greatest creation, a web of quantum communication relays that would allow every human ship and station to fight as a single organism. Network status? She asked her assistant. All nodes online, Dr. Foster. Response time is under 1 millisecond system-wide. We can coordinate attacks across billions of kilometers of space in real time. Amy smiled. The Kitharan Empire fought as individual ships and squadrons, each following its own orders. Humanity was about to fight as a single unified intelligence spread across an entire solar system. Admiral Vexithera studied the tactical displays with growing unease. The human fleet was smaller than his, but something felt wrong. They weren't deploying in any formation, he recognized. Their ships were scattered throughout the system with no apparent pattern. Commander, are you certain about these sensor readings? Yes, sir. The humans have only 180 ships. We outnumber them significantly. Vexithera's military instincts told him this was a trap, but he couldn't see how. The humans were outgunned and outnumbered. Their fleet was scattered and vulnerable. This should be the easy victory the Empire had expected 2 years ago. All ships advance on Earth. Maintain formation discipline. The Kitharan fleet moved into the inner solar system like a dark tide. They had learned to respect human tactics, but they still believed that superior firepower would win the day. They were about to discover how wrong they were. The first attack came from the direction of Jupiter. What looked like a small moon suddenly revealed itself to be Captain Danny Rivers commanding the Fortress Europa Reborn. The rebuilt station was 3 times larger than the original Europa station, and armed with weapons that combined the best of human and Kitharan technology. Surprise. Danny transmitted on all frequencies as his station opened fire. The bombardment from Europa Reborn struck the Kitharan fleet's flank with devastating effect. But before the aliens could respond, attacks began coming from every direction at once. Hidden weapons platforms throughout the asteroid belt revealed themselves. Camouflaged ships emerged from behind planets and moons. The entire solar system had become a weapon pointed at the invading fleet. Colonel Ryan Stone led his Marines in boarding actions against the confused Kitharan ships. But these weren't the desperate boarding actions of 2 years ago. These were precise surgical strikes carried out by soldiers who had learned to fight in zero gravity, in hostile environments, and against enemies twice their size. Remember, Ryan told his team as their assault ship approached a Kitharan cruiser, we're not just trying to capture this ship. We're trying to turn it against their own fleet. The boarding action was swift and brutal. Ryan's Marines moved through the alien ship like a virus, using their knowledge of Kitharan technology to turn the vessel's own systems against its crew. Within an hour, the cruiser had been captured and was firing on its former allies. Captain Nicole Wade commanded a squadron of hybrid ships that looked like no vessels either species had ever built. They were part human, part Kitharan, and part something entirely new. They moved through the battlefield like hunting sharks, striking at targets of opportunity and vanishing before return fire could find them. Target the command ships, Nicole ordered her squadron. Cut off their communications and watch their formation fall apart. The hybrid squadron attacked the Kitharan command vessels with weapons that shouldn't have existed. Energy beams that adapted to enemy shields. Missiles that learned from failed attacks and adjusted their approach. Boarding pods that could cut through any armor the Empire had ever developed. Admiral Vexithera watched his carefully planned invasion dissolve into chaos. His ships were being attacked from every direction by enemies he couldn't predict or counter. The humans weren't just fighting him, they were fighting as if they could read his mind. Sir, we're losing coordination with the outer squadrons, reported Commander Zektar. Their communications are being jammed by some kind of adaptive signal. And the inner squadrons? Under attack by ships that appear to be broadcasting our own identification codes. The fleet is firing on itself. Vexithara stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Half his fleet was showing as hostile contacts. The humans had somehow turned his own ships against him. The truth was even worse. Dr. Amy Foster's teams had spent 2 years learning Kitharan communication protocols. They could now hack enemy ships in real time, overriding their friend or foe systems and turning them into weapons against their own fleet. All remaining ships, fall back to the outer system, Vexithara ordered. Regroup and assess the situation. But there was nowhere to fall back to. The entire solar system had become a trap, and the Kitharan fleet was caught in the middle of it. Every retreat route was covered by hidden weapons. Every safe haven had been turned into another ambush site. The battle raged for 6 days. When it ended, the Kitharan fleet had been destroyed. Only a handful of ships escaped to carry word back to the Empire. Admiral Vexithara was not among them. His flagship had been captured by boarding teams led by Jake Morrison himself. The human admiral found Vexithara on his bridge, wounded but still fighting. "Surrender," Jake said simply. "Your fleet is gone. Your war is over." Vexithara looked at the human commander with something approaching respect. "You have won this battle, but the Empire will send more fleets. We will never stop until your species is destroyed." Jake smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was not kind either. "Admiral, you still don't understand. You're not fighting a species anymore. You're fighting an idea, and ideas are much harder to kill than planets." The peace negotiations took place aboard the captured Kitharan flagship. The Empire's representatives arrived expecting to dictate terms to a defeated enemy. Instead, they found themselves negotiating with equals who held all the advantages. "Your terms are unacceptable," declared the Kitharan diplomat. "The Empire does not negotiate with prey species." Jake Morrison leaned back in his chair. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of human ships throughout Kitharan space. The war had not ended with the Battle of Sol, it had expanded. "Prey species?" Jake asked. "Look at your own territory. We have ships in 17 of your star systems. We've liberated 6 worlds you held as slaves. Your newest colony at Rigel 7 just declared independence under human protection." The diplomat's scaled face showed shock. "Impossible. Our fleets would have stopped any invasion." "What fleets?" Lisa Brooks asked. She activated a tactical display showing the current state of Kitharan military forces. "You've lost 60% of your navy trying to conquer one solar system. Your remaining ships are scattered across hundreds of light years, trying to hold together an empire that's falling apart." The truth was that humanity had learned its final lesson. They had learned not just to defend themselves, but to spread their ideas of freedom and adaptation to other species. The Kitharan Empire was crumbling from within as its slave species discovered that their masters could be defeated. Dr. Amy Foster presented the final piece of the puzzle. "We've made contact with 47 species in your empire. 32 of them have asked for our help in gaining their independence. The others are considering it." The peace treaty that emerged was unlike any document in galactic history. The Kitharan Empire agreed to end its expansion and grant independence to any species that requested it. In return, humanity agreed not to actively destroy the remaining imperial worlds.